Hello, dear friends. My lovely audience is welcome to the East West Show. Jack Chow on the East West Show with GNE TV. President Donald Trump yesterday had his State of the Union address that was, according to this morning's poll, welcomed by almost three-fourths of Americans, according to ABC or NBC, both their statistics. And it was a good speech. It was a lengthy speech. It was, says everything. However, there are some areas that he didn't mention, right? So today with me, I have my good friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, chairman of LA County Probation Commission, and a trustworthy friend of mine for many, many years, and a former PD officer for Santa Monica. And he is the president of Meals on Wheels of the Queen of the Valley area. So to my friend Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack. It's always great to be here.
All right, sure. I'm glad every time you're here, I'm so happy. Well, only the subject has to be a little sad because we really have a shame on the face, a shame to our time, that is our homelessness.
Yes.
Right? Unfortunately, Donald Trump, who mentioned almost everything yesterday, but poverty. We do have a poverty, to my take. So what is your take? Do we not have a poverty as a social phenomenon?
Well, yes, we do, but I think it's kind of exclusive to the state of California. And I think as latest statistics show, we have 1/3 of all the nation's homeless right here in California. And that really says a lot about how our public policy is. And it's also a testament to the nice state we have, right? The nice weather, and people like to come here. Unfortunately, I think some of the policies that the government has driven people to our area and caused the huge problems that we see in some of our areas like the Santa Ana River and downtown Los Angeles, and then many other areas throughout the state.
All right. It looks that the nation, as a nation, I mean, the federal levels, there's no efforts of doing to tackle this problem. Am I right?
I haven't seen much of that.
And locally in California, for example, Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti has several times addressed the issue, and there are some movements, some action, actual things. Do you think there's any?
I think some of the actions that maybe the city of Los Angeles is taking is probably good, but I think my fear is that if they don't provide some critical services, then the problem will fail. If you don't have substance abuse treatment or mental health treatment or treatment for alcoholism, and you put people in the housing that the city of LA is trying to build, then you're going to have some real problems there.
Exactly. And the problem is getting even worse with the legalization of marijuana.
Right.
To me, marijuana is still marijuana. It's a chemical element. It remains the same before and after the legalization. Am I right?
You're right. And so does the federal government. The federal government believes that it's illegal as well. So.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Of course. Right. And this is it's a contradictory, and it is a very controversial issue so far.
Right.
However, in California, when this is added, you're talking about the drug addicts, right? And this is one more thing because they can do it openly.
Right.
Am I right?
That's correct.
Yesterday, during the State of Union address, Donald Trump, president, did mention something of the opioid pandemic. Right? And he did quote, unquote, some numbers of catastrophe, like 175 deaths per day. That is equivalent to 5 deaths per hour.
Yeah.
Of drug overdose. Okay. Now, he mentioned about the abusive drug addicts. He failed to mention about how the drug problems came into being.
Yes, he didn't talk very much about that. He did mention 64,000 people dying every year of opioid addiction and overdose. And you think that's just an incredible number. I mean, it used to be that automobile accidents was the high number, but now it looks like opioid addiction and overdoses are leading.
And also, he failed to mention the fact that it is not only the drug people, the problem of the drug people themselves. It is the big pharmaceutical industry, like pushing for profit, and that for that they have deals with the distributors, who in turn have deals with the doctors,
Right.
for prescribing as much as you could, something like that. And then on the other hand, they condense the concentration of the drug content, and so that it's more effective.
Right.
So, do you think there is a same problem in California, and do we have anything to do? I know in your probation area, you're talking about all kinds of problematic people,
Right.
problematic human beings. So, from your point of view, as a chairman of the LA County Probation Commission, how do you tackle the problem, please?
Well, I think the probation department itself has done some real good work in trying to develop programs to get people into treatment, into care, into programs, and also deterrence for our youth that we want to avoid sending them to our camps and juvenile facilities. I think the real underlying problem is as you say, the pharmaceutical industry and their collaboration with doctors, and the doctors who end up being pill mills who endlessly prescribe
Pill mills is a term, yes.
Right. And that's, I think, what drives it, because of the profit, right?
Yes.
And so I think there's not as much oversight as they should in that area of prescriptions and how they're managed, and identifying those who are doing that to take from the system, right? The system of the federal government funding the prescription drugs, and people abusing the issuance of prescription drugs, and subsequently the people that abuse the drug itself. So it's a big problem.
Roughly, where can we say that with all these open lands, a single-handed effort, just to only to tackle the homeless people, only to move them around, say, hey, you don't belong here. But where do they belong?
Well, I think many of them belong in some kind of care, right? I think most of the people, and it's a statement, it's a shame, as you mentioned, on a blight on our society. It tells us that we don't value human life as we should. I think many of those people would benefit from treatment, mandated treatment. Used to be that way. Before, you used to have courts that would send people to rehabilitation for alcoholism, and it could be very effective if you're forced to go by the court. But now that system is not being utilized because people never make it to court anymore.
Yeah. There's a saying that, I don't know if it's true or not, that among the homeless community, if they have a community, of more than half or 3/4 of them being drug addicts.
Right.
So.
No, that's very accurate. In fact, I used to, when I worked in the field and we dealt with homeless people, and I did that for 27 years, and I was dedicated to that one task of dealing with homeless issues through my community. I would always find that 1/3 being mentally ill, and that other third being either addicted to alcohol or drugs. And that last third, or even smaller percentage, are people just down on their luck. recently homeless people who lost maybe their lease to their home and they have no place to go. Some of them fleeing domestic violence in the case of mothers with kids who end up on the street. You know, those are circumstances that they can't help. And so the vast majority, 2/3 of those people had some addiction, had some kind of mental illness or a combination of both that caused them to stay on the street.
I was, Joe, once optimistic with the issue because I spent quite a few time on this issue, and including my own homework, including going there to talk to them myself. I did learn some different aspects where this problem accumulated to this point, right? And the number I used was a number based upon the statistics of 2016. So for 2017, the entire year, I've been quoting that number. That is 46,000 altogether, and a little kind of you can round up, right? Okay, not something like say I was talking about 46K, 46,000. Before I know, when this year starts, the number goes to 58. That was quite a shock to me because I was almost hopeful that with these efforts that LA County, not LA County, LA City, and California State altogether probably will have the problem minimized to some extent. Now we see the number of the rate of the number increasing.
Right.
Surpasses the ability. It's a sad story, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, they just did the homeless count last week, right, throughout LA County. And I think the numbers are still going to be low because you take a snapshot one day, a few hours, and go out. I think it's going to be an undercounting of the number of people that are actually out there.
So anyways, the 58,000 is the new latest number.
That's large.
And then that number will never stay there. It will not stay there most possibly. It will still increase.
Right.
Right? Okay. My dear friends, today with my brother Joe Gardner, former Santa Monica PD officer, currently chairman of Los Angeles County Probation Commission, we try to see the problem of homeless, how big that is. And then we'll see what causes it, and then we'll see if there's a way to deal with it. So stay with us. We'll be right back, please. Hello, my dear friends, my lovely friends, ladies and gentlemen. We love this community. It is a beautiful community that we here enjoy the beauty of democracy. We have all kinds of material supplies around us. However, we got to remember, got to keep in mind, we have less fortunate folks. We have even folks once in trouble, and we have folks who may be still in trouble. After all, they are all human beings, like we are. All right, they're the same thing, the same kind of animals we are. Put it that way, please. Now, the homeless problem is rather a big issue, I would say. If we can take care of the world so orderly, why can't we do something to our own? With me is my friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, the probation officer, the probation chairman of a county probation commission. He's been on the drug problem, which is related to homeless problem, for 27 years when he was in PD. Now he's still on the job, and we try to put our brains together, because we seem to be the very few who cares about it, wants to bring the attention to the problem, and that we want to see if somebody can walk out, or people can walk out, do their parts, take the problem. Joe, do you agree with me that if we want to resolve, we want to do to deal with the problem, we would have to do an analyze to see what has caused it, right? You mentioned about one third, one fourth analysis.
Thirds. Yeah, it's thirds.
One third analysis like that. So for the first third, for the first part, right, what exactly has caused them?
I think lack of resources, and one third that you might be referring to are those that are mentally ill, severely mentally ill, that shouldn't be out on the street. They should be in a care facility, getting daily treatment, getting prescription drugs to manage their symptoms. I think that's the real tragedy, is that you can't get those folks into the system because we have laws that say, you know, unless you're gravely disabled or a threat to yourself or someone else, you won't get in there. And sometimes, depending on how it's interpreted, those folks never get into the system.
Let's roughly say that we have a total of 60,000, because we're going to hit that record pretty soon anyway, right? Okay. Now, cut one third, that's 20,000 being mentally ill, right? And you mentioned about centers, to house them,
Right.
at least to house them, and then feed them, and then cure them. If there's no cure, let them stay there that way, right? Okay. Now, do we not, as a county, LA County, have the facility to house the 20,000?
I don't believe we do, not at this point in time.
All right.
And you're talking about specialized housing. And in fact, the correct term, or the term used in the social service area, is called supportive housing, where you have the housing component where people have the shelter, but they also have the clinicians and the people there that will help them while they're housing. Working with them.
Working with the house, in the house, right? Or for the house.
And there's not enough of that.
There is not enough. To what extent can we offer? For example, we can deal with half of it, or a third of it, or 3/4 of it, to your knowledge?
It's hard to say, because I always hear the same thing over and over again. There's not enough resources. There are not enough of the supporting housing complex or converted hotels or motels that would allow that kind of care. Is very limited. So we're probably touching a tenth of that, you know.
I see. So we are far away from being capable of handling that problem, right now. And let's see. I really want to, maybe that's another day, study for another day, to find out by nature, right? How many percent would be mentally ill within 1 million?
Yeah, it's really hard to say.
Yeah. 5 ppm, or 10 ppm, or 20 ppm, and then we use that module to check with the total population of Los Angeles County. Los Angeles County has about almost 10 million, right? For example, if they have 5% by nature or 10% by nature, so if we learn by nature, there's going to be certain numbers of people who become mentally ill, though. As a county, we ought to have the facility for that.
We should.
It is by the basic, and later we can make it by law.
Right.
Do you agree with me?
I do, but there are so many complex factors. The problem is humongous, because we have a large number of people who will come from all over the United States with those problems and come and filter into LA County because they see that maybe there's opportunity to, number one, escape the cold, right? But the other thing is, you walk in here, you can immediately sign up for services and start receiving services, as small as they might be, a monthly stipend or whatever, and that's what drives a lot of people here. So you have to take into that fact that we have we're bringing people here.
That's exactly the issue. I thank you very much for hitting the nail on the head, right? The only thing to stop them coming into or rushing into California, to stop the influx, the only way to do is that at a federal level, some attention are given, right? Some decisions are made, some actions are taken, so that every state, every city, every county does the same thing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So
I agree with that.
that will stop them moving
Right.
around. That will stop them rushing into California. So now it ends up still a federal issue, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I think partly the local policies, the state policies that allow people to just walk into the state and then immediately start getting services has created that problem. So I think the state could do a lot more in itself to stop that by saying, look, we're not going to give you services unless you've been here for 1 to 3 years, you know that you're a resident here, because we want to help the residents of California, the Californians, with treatment and care as it should be. And I'm sorry if you came here thinking you should get services right away at the expense of somebody else, and perhaps maybe that's wrong.
But on the other hand, this is a time-sensitive issue.
Sure, yeah.
Right? A guy with or without mental illness needs to eat 3 meals a day.
Right.
Right? So we got to, before we understand the problem, we have to give them food anyway.
Right.
Right? So to eat food, provide a housing, a roof over the head or whatever, this comes to first, right? Comes to first. So that you got to tackle that problem before you even understand the whole problem.
Yeah.
So now, action, 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 action. So
Absolutely.
I emphasize we take some action before we do the study, we do the theory, we write beautiful articles, we do whatever, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Do you think so?
No, I think so. You know, we should be able, you can utilize the laws that already exist. You know, 5150 of the Welfare and Institutions Code says you take a person off the street if they are a danger to themselves or others. But we don't utilize that because oftentimes you can't get the support from the hospitals that you take them to. The hospitals say, well, you know, taking into account the cost, they may let that guy sit on the gurney for 5 hours and they say, oh, he looks fine to me, and let him go. And then he starts the whole problem again the next day, right? So, you know, it's got to be a lot of collaboration between law enforcement and Department of Mental Health and the local emergency hospitals to really look at these people closely and say, you know what, this person really needs to stay in a facility for a while so that they could get stabilized.
Provided you have the facility.
Right,
exactly. If you do not have a facility or you do not have enough though, well, whereas you're facing a number that is increasing or fast increasing, well, it's a big trouble anyway.
Yeah.
It's
And
big, getting bigger.
And the state has phased out state hospitals, you know. They don't have big state hospitals as they used to back in the 60s. And so a lot of homeless people were maybe products of that were released out into the community just for us to fend with the problem.
All right. Okay, anyway. Okay, my dear friends, well, with my friend Joe Gardner, we are talking about a problem, that very persistent problem that has never left us. Yet, number one, we have people do not want to recognize that's a problem. Number two, they do, but they don't care. Number three, well, they do, they recognize, they know it's a problem, but no action taken. All kinds of people around, however, the problem is there. Every 4 or 5 hours, they want to eat, right? So, with me today, my friend Joe Gardner. We want to take a break right now. We come back to find out, well, a little further, what has caused it and what would probably, from the root, to get the problem taken care of. Stay with us, please. dear friends, welcome back to the show. It's a discussion about our homelessness, which Donald Trump has not mentioned yesterday during his State of the Union address speech, which is beautifully done, very beautifully done. Lots of people give thumbs up for that. Yet there are holes, there are blanks left over. Yeah. With me talking about one of the problems that he hasn't touched was our poverty. Poverty, extreme poverty. That includes our homeless problem. Talking about the problem is my friend, Joe Gardner. He's LA County Probation Commission Chairman, and he is a former police officer for 27 years of Santa Monica PD, specialized in the narcotic task force. Anyway, so welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Jack.
Now, we all want to get to the root problem, to the root of the problem, right? So, do you think we've been talking about AB 109, Propositions 46 and 56, or so on and so forth. Yeah, 57, so on and so forth, for quite a bit. Do you think they are related? And the people told me that some of them gets out of jail and join the party right away. I mean, homeless.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
Your take, please?
I think that's a real tragedy, and I'm glad you touched upon root causes, because seemingly we're, as a society, as a government, we're reactionary to symptoms, but we don't ever drill down to the root causes of the problems. And you touched upon AB 109 and Prop 47. I think two of those are a large contributing factor to the problems we see, growing homeless camps, a lot of homeless people all over the place, is because they never get into the system now. Prop 47 has allowed people to decriminalized a lot of things and allowed people to stay on the street. You know, there's no incentive to arrest them or try and get them into court, because of the way the law is written. They're issued tickets, they end out back on the street, and they accumulate ticket after ticket after ticket, which causes more warrants, and then finally, after so many months, they might get into the system.
Even though they arrest them, the flash incarceration is not an issue.
It's not
They're
permanent.
in and out, like you buy a hamburger, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, the revolving door system.
Revolving door system, right?
Right.
Okay, now, that said, do you agree to cut the population, I mean the homeless population, into 4 quarters? Number 1, the first quarter, the criminals, early release. Number 2, become the mentally ill, right? Number 3, the druggies, right? Number 4, the less fortunate who were once upon a time hit by some bad luck or someone, right? So, okay, now, of course, they are sometimes a early release is a bad guy. He does drugs and he's homeless. He's everything.
Right.
So you can't actually separate them, right? Okay, now, the analysis will give us a help to find out ways to resolve the problem, right?
Right.
So with that analysis, do you think we want to take care of the first quarter?
Yeah, I do believe we can take care of them. What's sadly missing is enough jail space. I think the biggest problem we face is getting them into the system. And I think the courts have the tools that they need to send somebody to mental health treatment, to rehabilitation for alcohol or drugs. But if they never make it to the courthouse steps, then we're spinning our wheels.
They're on the street, never coming back.
Right. They just keep going through that revolving door of arrest, tickets, and back out on the street. But if they never go to the courthouse to actually get adjudicated and put into some kind of treatment, then the cycle continues. And I think that's sadly what's missing. That's the component that's not being utilized.
Yeah, for a short time being, it is okay, but in the long run,
Yeah.
in the country or system or state system or even county system like that, like this, like what we are now, we got to do something because it can't be a forever problem, can't be a norm. Speaking of a norm, though, obviously you are a few years on top of me. So in the old days, do we still have that much of the homeless problem?
Well, it depends. It just seemingly people gravitate to where life is the easiest or where they perceive life to be the easiest. So you may not have that in some of our suburban areas as much as you do in downtown LA or along our beaches in Venice and Santa Monica. So yeah, it varies. It all depends. And then public policy is another part of that. If a city allows that problem to persist and they don't enforce the law, or they don't have programs to help people get off the street once they, come to their jurisdiction, then that creates a problem, And there's deterrence. As we said before, if you imposed a restriction on obtaining services, in other words, you can't just arrive here by Greyhound bus and then go right down to the welfare office and sign up for, state funds to help you, then maybe you'll decide to go back home, right? So I think that's a deterrent in itself. You need to be focused on taking care of the people here.
It sounds like soliciting enough for them to ride a Greyhound to get here, landing in LA, and get registered and started being served, right?
Exactly.
Of course, I have no problem to understand the service because they're human anyway.
Sure.
They're human animals, same as we are. Bad guy need to eat.
Right.
You don't want to die of hunger anyway. So that exactly comes to next point, that before a long-term resolution is found or are found, we got to do things, take care of the day-to-day problems, right?
Right.
Like what? Like this guy needs food. As what caused him to need food? That's out of question. Question is, right now, do you have the food to feed him?
Yeah.
That is a problem, right? Let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, we want to find out within the parameter given, what we want to do. So with me, my friend Joe Gardner, a former police officer and current chairman of LA County Probation Commission, is sharing his thoughts with us about how we want to tackle the problem of homelessness, which is a shame to our time. 2018 now, right? The world has entered into another time, another totally different time, and yet we're still on the page of yesterday, right? So now, we'll be right back, please. Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to the show. As a matter of fact, it's a discussion of about our homeless problem. With me today is my good friend, Mr. Joe Gardner, former police officer for Santa Monica PD for 27 glorious years, and he is now currently the chairman of LA County Probation Commission. We do care about the problem of our homelessness, and we are the few who still are trying to voice out that we have a problem to take care of, because the reason is very simple, so simple that I can do it in one word, that they are human, right?
Right.
Now, by that as a principle, regardless of how you find out the root problem that caused it, right? They are there. They need to eat every 5 hours, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And they need a place to sleep in. They need a roof, something over their head. Mm-hmm. we see lots of efforts, such as America City saying something, such as the county, such as you from you as the chairman of the probation commission. Everybody trying to do a part a little bit, right? Okay, now, recently I've heard something that upsets me very much. They say they don't belong here. They drive them out of there. Takes the Santa Ana River Trail, for example. They push them out of their area,
Right.
saying, quote unquote, they don't belong here.
Where did they go?
Where do you think they belong?
Well, they probably belong in some kind of facility, many of them.
And the facility we confirm, we do not even have
Enough.
10%
Right.
of the facility needed.
And it's always been very frustrating to me, Jack, that we have state vacant properties that nobody's been in for 2, 3, 4 decades. You have Air Force bases that closed down that had base housing that you could have put,
Yes,
people in.
you're right.
Right.
Dodger Stadium.
Well, when on the off season, right?
Well, yeah, sure. All right.
Yeah.
Whenever they do not have one, they have a big event, right? Okay, now. Okay, are you Christian yourself?
Of course.
Okay,
yeah.
now, I'm a Christian myself, right? I swear to God, I am a Christian myself. Now, I have a very brave recommendation. How about we open up all churches?
Yeah. It's not
What
said
is-
enough,
What are churches for?
right? For the welfare of the people, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Nurture the people.
Nurture the people, right? Okay, now, especially when it is cold night, right? Open all the churches, everyone, big or small, a big town, small town, including Lady of Angels, like that big church, or large ones in Pasadena, downtown Los Angeles, or in small towns such as Rosemead, such as El Monte, such as Monterey Park. Everybody opens their own city's church. How about that? Do you think God will get angry with me?
No, I don't think so. We're supposed to take care of our fellow man. So, I would think that we can do that for a short-term thing, but we need to think big. We need to think out of the box.
Yes. I'm talking about the cold nights, right? I'm talking about the rainy days, right? I'm talking about in a situation, some of the women, the children need some kind of a roof over them, though. Right. How about a little mercy, right? For a time being to do that, right?
Yeah.
I can't help crying for this problem, because we're human. Everybody, we're the same thing. We breathe the same air. We're the same human body. It is cold out there. You can't stand it. I can't stand it either. That's the problem, right? Okay, now.
Unfortunately, they have some of those shelters that are open, the cold weather shelter system. There's probably not enough of them, but there are some that people can go to each night, especially during the winter time.
Okay. There are bad guys, of course. If you close doors on them, they set fires on the door. Yeah. It was reported like 3-4 days ago. The guy set fire Lady of Angels, right? Because the door is closed. He wants to get in because of the cold outside. Yeah. I'm not glorifying the arson. I'm not glorifying that by any extent. I'm talking about as human, they struggle.
They do.
Right? Good guy or bad guy, if you want to push his head into water, he struggles anyway.
Right.
He fight with you anyway, good guy or bad guy, right? Because the way of survival. That is almost from instinct. So if I someday make a call here on a cold day to open all churches, do you think I get criticized?
No, I don't think so. It's a compassionate thing to do. I mean, as a society, we need to be compassionate, to care for our fellow man. I think there are right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. We have to show compassion for others and help them in their plight if we can. But then additionally, they have to help themselves, right? They have to be open-minded to do that.
Of course, right. And human can talk, right? Human communicate.
Right.
You talk to them nicely, brother, sister, please keep that part clean when you're done in the morning, all right? And do something, because I work so hard to get you the roof, and please understand my part, and then you do your part, something like that. Communicate with them.
I wish it were so simple.
Don't look down upon them.
Yeah.
Regard them, well, respect them as human. They would understand, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. I think some of our county jails could serve, or city jails could serve that purpose. So,
yes,
if we don't have enough jail space downtown LA, I think some of the local city jails who sometimes don't have any prisoners in there would be able to, if you can get them into court, you can get them in to do their time at those city jails.
All right.
And then you have a caseworker that comes and visits them at the jail to try and give them a plan so that when they get out, they can get into shelter, they can get into treatment.
Yeah, right. Like stepping them down, right? Okay, now. Okay, altogether, we do have ways, right? And also, there was one last thing I want to mention. Remember last time you and I were on the show, we mentioned about food waste?
Yes.
There's a huge food waste,
Tons
right?
and tons.
Over 51%, tons of food wasted. You check about school cafeteria, kids would have done milk, way like that, and even whole food without touching goes to
Right
the trash
into the
can.
trash.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, stop waste, have them donated to some shelters whatsoever. However, with all these things way out together, we need one voice to call. Who do you think will be the one to call?
Gosh, I don't know. Maybe it's an influential pastor or priest or someone who would really.
Pope Frank?
Someone, yeah. I mean.
Yeah, he's busy with the pedophiles.
Yeah. But maybe you find someone who would be a voice for us to think, to compel us to do that. I think that's what's important.
Very good. My dear audiences, I have an email box designed for you. tellmydj@gmail.com. tellmydj@gmail.com. Tell my DJ, altogether one word, TLLMYDJ.com. How do you think? What do you think we can do? And how do you think we can handle the problem? And what's your take of the problem? And so on and so forth. You can say to me, and I'll quote you, and I'll help you, and I'll need your help anyway. So send it to me. I thank you very much. My dear audience, we're a little over time, and it's worth it, I believe. Thank you for watching. And to my dear friend, Joe, who take time out of his busy schedule. Oh, by the way, he's busy with the Valley program, Meals on Wheels, that brings the meals to needy people, like old grandma, grandpa thing, and like somebody in bed for because of they're sick, or people do not have money for the food, or so on and so forth. Meals on Wheels, a man never stops service. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, good.